Pandas is great at reading CSV files, calculating statistics like averages, and writing out to CSV files again. But what if you don't have access to pandas? Let's look at how you can do some of those things using plain Python. Let's assume we have a file that looks like this. To begin, let's use a context manager to open the file and read the contents. Next, let's get this into a list of lines by splitting on the new line character. Just to be sure that worked, let's print out lines. Okay, that looks good. Next, we can form the headers by splitting the first of the lines on the comma character. Let's print that to see that it works. Very good. Now we need to store the numbers, and now is a good time to think about data structures. I'm going to use a list of lists data structure here. Hello, Sammy. Look who came by. Off you go. To begin a list of list data structures, I'll form an empty list. Then I will write a for loop. I used slice notation to take only the first line through all of the rest of the lines. Next, I will process each line. Let's break down what I did there. Process line is equal to a list comprehension, and in that list comprehension we're going to take the integer typecast of x for each x, which is a string, in line.split on the comma. Once we have the processed line, we can append that to data. Let's take a quick look at data now. Okay, that looks good. We can delete the print statement. The next thing I'd like to do is define a function to calculate an average so that we can calculate the average on each line. I'm using T as a shorthand for list, since list is a reserved name in Python. To calculate an average, one way to do this is to start with a total variable equal to 0, then do a for loop for each x in T, take total and add x to it. Then the result is equal to total divided by length of t. And we can return the result. Side note to later talk about why I chose to use the variable result even though it's not strictly necessary. Now that we have a function to define the average, let's calculate that average for each row in the data. For each row in the data, I want to append the result of the function average applied on that row. Let's take a look at the data structure now. As an aside, notice that the fourth number in each of these short lists is now. As an aside, notice that the fourth of each of these numbers, namely the average, has a decimal point, or to put it another way, it's a float. That's just the way divide is defined in Python. Now let's calculate an output we can save to a file. We'll start with a variable named output, then say that it's equal to a string with a comma, followed by the join function on the headers. Next, for each row in data, we will say that output plus equals comma dot join row plus the new line character, which by the way I forgot on line 26. Now we can finally write the output to a file. Again, we'll use a context manager. This time using W for write mode. Now let's run this. Oh, bother. Okay, you're in luck, you get to see me debugging. It says traceback most recent call last, file main.py, line 29 in module. Output plus equals comma dot join row, type error, item 0, expected string instance, int found. So I need to take this data that I have and let's make a processed row. Processed row is equal to list comprehension string of x for x in row, and now we use the processed row plus the new list, and we write that out to a file. Let's try that now. It seems to have run correctly. Let's inspect our file. And indeed, we have ABC 123 2.0 as the average, and all of these other numbers, including an 8.666 as the average. You might want to clean that up and shorten that decimal, but we don't need to worry about that now. Maybe I'll leave that as an exercise for the viewer. And with that, thanks for watching. Oh, and I'll include this code on GitHub under Errorcodes Community and include the link below.